glad you're here. We've got a terrific program lined up for you today. We'll get started by singing the national anthem, but before we do that, take a minute and greet those around you.
Shall we pray? Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful for another day. We're grateful for the rain, but we're mindful of those who are still working to recover from the flooding, and we would ask that you would be dear and near to them today. We thank you for the many groups who've come into our community to help us, to work alongside us, and to bringing about recovery and restoration. We thank you for the Rotary Club and the many Rotary Clubs who are doing so many wonderful projects for our neighbors and for one another. We ask, Father, that you would bless and nourish the food to our bodies, and as we come together today, may we be reminded of the blessing of neighbors and the marvelous friendships that we have in this club. May we never take them for granted, for we ask it all in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Roger. You may be seated. I'll call forward Danny Garnett, who's going to introduce guests and visiting Rotarians. While he's on his way up, please take a minute and put some money in the cart bucket. There's a blue cart bucket on each table. If someone would start passing the bucket, I'd sure appreciate it. And here's Danny Garnett.
Yes, we wanted to take a moment and welcome everybody here. And also, I know that we have one visiting Rotarian. And can you raise your hand? Because I don't have a card on you. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, I'm Constable Captain Rotary.
Okay. We're glad to have you today. And also, I know that we've got two visiting Rotarians. Not Rotarians, but just guests. And if you've got a guest with you today, would you stand and we'll try to get the microphone to you.
I'm Andrew Clarkson. I'm pleased to have with me my sister, Margaret Clarkson. She and her husband grew up in South Carolina, in Arlington for the last 25 years. 20 years? All around. So, been out of town. Margaret is a partner with Grand Fuzz. It's a DC-based PR firm. She's also now enjoying part of working on a pathway, a walking pathway, walking, which is going to connect the riverfront with USC, with downtown, with Vista, and the historic district, and there's some private-public partnerships going on. So, Margaret Clarkson.
Do we have any other visiting, any other Rotarians with visitors? I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? This microphone working all right? It's always interesting with the microphone, so at any rate, welcome everyone. I'm glad you're here, and we'll continue with the program. John Denise today will bring the health and happiness report.
Thank you, President Mark, and thank all of you all for coming out in this great weather. So we're glad everybody is here. As far as member news, I'm going to, I guess, start with the sadder information. Bernie Maybank, who's a longtime member of this club, Bernie's daughter passed away on Tuesday of last week. They held a memorial service for her at Edisto over the weekend. So please keep Bernie and his family in your thoughts and prayers, not just for this week, but for a long time to come. They say the death of one of your children is the hardest thing there is in the human psyche. So please keep Bernie in your thoughts and prayers. Also along those lines, Scott Davis, who's a new member of this club. I don't know if Scott's here. No, Bernie's probably not here today. And I'm not sure if Scott is here either, but Scott Davis is a new member. His father, Roy, passed away this past Saturday. In other health news, Jack Hupp, I just learned, we don't have much information, but Jack Hupp was taken to the hospital this morning. So please keep Jack Hupp, the godfather of this Rotary Club, in your thoughts and prayers, and we'll hopefully have more information. And go to the website, look for emails from President Mark and Carrie about what's going on with Jack Hupp, but let's definitely keep him in our thoughts and prayers. Also, he's not a member of this club, but he really should be. He should be an honorary member. He's probably got better attendance at this club than half of this club. But Jim Hudson had back surgery last week, so he's recovering, doing well, still helping people, texting like crazy, and being Jim Hudson. So keep Jim Hudson in your thoughts and prayers. Rusty DePass shared with me that he had breakfast with Candy Heath Sr. this weekend and said he's doing well, so much so that Rusty's trying to talk Candy into coming back to the club. So that's a test of wills right there when you get those two. So that's going to be an interesting one. Let's see. Some of the better health and happiness news. Tom Gammon and Meredith Atkinson, spent the weekend in Christiansburg, Virginia to celebrate Tom's dad, Meredith's grandfather's birthday, and he turns 102 today. So, his name is George. They say he still lives independently and walks the track at the rec center 3 times a week, and is a really inspirational guy. Now, we should get him down here and he could sit at the Dunbar table. Matt Kennel's daughter, Emily, she's a second-year pharmacy student at USC, and she won the statewide compounding contest and will represent the state of South Carolina at the national competition at UCLA. Which, they compound some really different drugs out there at UCLA. So you gotta tell her she's going to have to probably get a little creative. Just speaking of Rusty DePass, everybody knows and loves Rusty, and while you might disagree with his politics, and I know I strongly disagree with his school affiliations and his inappropriate playing of Tiger Rag at times when he's over there at the piano. But I think Rusty's a great Rotarian. And one of the things I love about Rusty is, as I mentioned, he just had breakfast with Candy Heath. Rusty stays in touch with the elderly members of this club and even former members of this club, and does just an amazing job of staying in touch with those folks. And I just think we should all give Rusty a round of applause for all the stuff he does. So now, birthdays. Is Melinda McCuffsey here? She's not here. She's celebrating. What's the deal, Frank? Okay, another great Rotarian spending her time with a sick brother. But so Melinda McCuffsey's birthday is Wednesday, and I know that because we share the same birthday. I'm probably a couple decades older than Melinda, but she's celebrating her birthday. Now, I started celebrating my birthday a little early. Saturday, some of you guys may know I have an aviation company in addition to an IT business, but I'm into aviation. I fly airplanes and stuff, and I fought every instinct that I have by going with my son and jumping out of a perfectly good airplane in flight on Saturday. So that was a really good time. I don't know what it says about all the other stuff that I do, the 364 other days of the year, but it really wasn't that big an adrenaline rush for me. So I don't know, it was like, everyone was like, oh my gosh, was that amazing? I was like, it was all right, it was pretty cool. Heart rate got up a tiny bit, but all I did was fall. It wasn't like I had to do a whole lot. But so I did that. So I recommend if anybody did, I actually jumped the Flying Gamecocks, and there's a place up in Chester that I really recommend. It's called Skydive Carolina. So if that's on your bucket list and you've ever thought about doing it, I highly recommend it. They do a great job up there. So, for the traditional health and happiness stuff, people get up here and they tell bad jokes or jokes that they think they probably shouldn't have told, or jokes they get from Bob Crutchfield. And then, Emery Starretts does her quizzes. So I thought about doing a quiz. Thought about singing like Robert Goings, but y'all really don't want that, I can tell you right now. I'm the worst singer on the planet, so I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to go a little Wayne Cannon on you, and I'm going to talk about the Rotarian magazine. But there's no quiz, and I'm sorry, there's no prizes. Maybe somebody could have this issue of the magazine. But there was an article in there that was really impactful to me, and it was out of last November's issue. Everybody should, this cover's pretty recognizable, so if you got your stack of Rotarian magazine someplace, go find this guy. But you can also find it online and forward the link to everybody. But it's an article on the importance of saying thanks and gratitude. And the article starts by recounting a story of the author is on a flight to Israel, and they land in Israel, and everybody on the plane breaks out in applause. And he's very confused and bewildered, and he's standing there, and so finally this Hasidic Jewish gentleman can see the confused look on his face, and he starts to explain to him that we're saying thanks for the miracle of arriving in the Promised Land. And so the author starts thinking about that, and in the beginning it didn't really mean all that much to him, and then he started thinking, and if you think about it, where, in the Old Testament it took the Jewish people 40 years to get to the Promised Land. And then in more modern times, people have gone through religious persecution and survived the Holocaust and had to escape from places to get to the Promised Land. And this group of people, got in a giant metal tube, went hurtling through the sky at 500 miles an hour, and several hours later land safely in the Promised Land. And the guy's like, really is a miracle, don't you think? And especially the older folks in the club would think about, where aviation has gone in your lifetime, the things we can do today. I mean, it truly is a miracle. So this guy talks about how that really started getting him thinking about, where we are today and how spoiled as a society we've become and the things that we take for granted. And so he goes on to point out the many health benefits of having a positive attitude and having an attitude of gratitude. And so he even started on a project he called a gratitude journal, where he takes the time to write down 5 things every week that you're grateful for, and how over time it helps you just improve your attitude and be grateful for things and not take things for granted. And I just think that's a great thing to do. So I really recommend the article to everybody. And I'll leave you with these parting thoughts. Joy is the simplest form of gratitude. So my advice would be find joy wherever you can. In life and in golf, your attitude is the only thing you're truly in control of. Because you really can't control that ball. You can yell, you can pray, you can beg. You're not in control. And in life and in golf, bad things are inevitable. Your response to them will determine your success. Hope you all have a great week and find some things to be grateful for.
Nice job, John. Well done, and thank you for doing that today. So we will keep the meeting moving along here. I'm going to call forward Roger Stroop. Roger's past president, and he has a history moment for us. So, Roger.
You see the sign up there that says Columbia Meeting, Rotary Club Meeting Places. That has nothing to do with meetings coming up or whatever. This is past meetings. I'm not sure when the club first met, the first couple of months where they met, but I do know that in 1917, or a couple months after starting, they were meeting at the Jefferson Hotel, which you see here in the 1919 photograph. However, after 10 years in 1927, they were not satisfied with either the location, they were meeting in the Rat's Cellar in the basement, or with the food. So from 1927 to 1931, the club met at the Rosemary Tea Room run by Mrs. Pauline Weston, located over the Wingfield's drugstore. Mr. Wingfield was one of the first charter members of the club. If you look at this photo, at this 1972 bird's eye view of Columbia, it's located on this corner. This is the Sylvan building, which was built in 1870. Wingfields is located right here. This is an 1872 view. Wingfields is no longer there, of course. The Wells Fargo building is what's in that place today. In 1931, the club moved back to the Jefferson Hotel and met there until 1966 when the Jefferson Hotel closed. If you look closely at that building, you'll notice, and since John's an aviator, he would know this, but on the top of the picture, the little thing you see up on the top right there, that points to Owens Field Airport, so that aviators who had no radar or any other way to find the field could find it on the top of the hotel. And they met in the ballroom of the hotel. And today, that location is Jefferson Square, which was built in the late 60s, early 70s. From 1966 to 1986, the club met at the American Legion Hut on Pickett Street. By 1986, the club had outgrown the American Legion Hut. First, as we approached 300 members, it was getting too crowded, and the building itself was beginning to show its age. I recall going to a meeting in the early 1980s when the American Legion had painted the walls in the building from the 6-foot level down. They painted it dark blue. And they also painted the piano dark blue because it was below 6 feet down. Shortly after that, the club leadership believed that the city's senior Rotary Club needed a more appropriate venue. From 1986 to 1992, we met in the ballroom at the Radisson Hotel. The Radisson proved to be a great location, except when the hotel needed the ballroom for a convention, and we ended up meeting in the bar without the benefit of a bartender. Today, the Radisson is gone, and it's a parking lot adjacent to the Arnold School of Public Health, and I rode by the other day, and it looks like there's another student housing project probably going in that space. 1992, we moved to the fairgrounds, meeting at Seawells, which was located there at that point. And then in 1999, we followed Seawells across the street to the current location. Over the years, the meeting times have changed from the club. And I'll put those up for you to look at. During the 1920s, the club had difficulty settling on meeting time for their monthly meeting. The club met monthly. From 1916 to 22, the meetings were from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Then for a short time in 1922, they met from 12:30 to 1:30, but quickly changed to go from 2:15 to 3:15. Then in January 1923, the semi-monthly meetings were from 2 to 3:15. On March 3rd, 1927, the club began meeting every Monday at 2:15. By 1954, the club was meeting at 1:30, but a motion to move the meeting to 1 o'clock failed that year. I'm still trying to find out when the club began meeting at 1 p.m., which was our meeting time until last year, when the club moved and moved its meeting to the current hour of 12:30. So the question of where and when we meet is not new. It's been a topic of discussion at the board meetings since 1960.
Thanks, Roger. That's well done. If that information was familiar to you, it's because we looked at it in the fall. Roger shared something very similar back in the fall, and asked him to kind of go through that again today, being that our club's going to celebrate our 100th year this year, this November. We've talked about that. And we've met now, you just learned, met in some different locations around the city, met at different times. And so if there's anything that's constant when you look back, it's that we've changed. And we continue to change. We continue to look around. We continue to check out new and exciting venues in the Columbia area. Just 2 years ago, under Hal's leadership, we visited 3 locations. And next week, next Monday, we'll be at the Alumni Center, the My Carolina Alumni Center, to experience that location and check out that venue. And to tell you more about it, Jesse Bullard with Southern Way Catering is going to come forward. But I want you to understand that we're not necessarily going over to the Alumni Center to make a decision about whether or not we move. What we are doing is keeping our tradition of inspecting and looking around and checking out venues as they're built or renovated. And so we'll have an opportunity to take in the USC Alumni Center next Monday to talk about it, see what we learned, see what we like, and just to have that information as we go forward. So to tell you more about it, about logistics, that kind of thing, Jesse Bowler from Southern Wake Cape. Okay, so this is the last announcement, so be sure you listen to this one. Next week, we will be at the Alumni Center in the Vista. It is on Senate Street, directly across from the Convention Center beside the Hilton Hotel. The easiest place to park is in the parking garage. There are two entrances. Those two entrances also serve as the two exits. One is on Park Street and one is on Pendleton. So whenever you come to pull a ticket at the garage, there'll be a button that says push that button. Go inside and we'll give a parking validation. So whenever you leave, you will take that parking ticket and put it in the machine just as if you were to pay, but instead of putting money in, the gate will just go up and you will leave. So be sure that you come in and go out either the Park Street exit or the Pendleton Street exit, and be sure to get your parking validation at check-in at the front desk or the front registration table that we'll have set up outside the ballroom. You can walk in the front door of the Alumni Center. There's also a side entrance right beside the hotel, or right beside the garage. But the entrance to the Alumni Center is on the second floor of the garage. So lots of signage. You can't miss it. Walk right in. We'll have our red sign-in table just like we always do. And then lunch will be served beginning at 11:45. And set and ready to go. If anyone has any questions, let me know. We've got a great presentation by Dr. Harris Bastides, president of the university, and look forward to having him in a new venue with some great food and great fellowship for our Rotarians. So, thank you. Thank you, Jesse. So, we will not be here next week. I know that's clear to everyone. We'll have another reminder sent out on Friday. Looking forward to next week. And if I could just take a minute here, would board members of this year's board please stand? I just want to recognize everyone real quick, all the board members that are serving. So we got a few today, and then we'll clap for them in just a second. But Beth Irick, Jack Sloan, Elliot Powell, John Bacus, and these are folks that are working real hard behind the scenes. I want everyone to give them a round of applause, right? Board, we actually have 7 elected members, and then we also have a communications chairperson, we have a membership chairman, we have a treasurer, and a club secretary that also serves. So the board consists of a total of about 12 or 13 folks. But those folks are working real hard on behalf of the club. I just want to take a quick minute to recognize them, and then also ask the 4 of you to meet me at the piano after the meeting and have a quick question for you. So with that, we will move into the program today to introduce our speaker, President-elect John Bacus.
Good afternoon. I am pleased to introduce to you today Michaela Schultz. Michaela came to Columbia with the St. Bernard Project. She is the South Carolina Operations Manager, and she's going to tell you about a really interesting organization. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her, but I'm going to tell you something else first. This organization was happened after Katrina came about, when one man went down to New Orleans to do some work to help rebuild homes in New Orleans and just help work in the disaster. And it created a life that is extended on for a number of years, and I'm sure she'll tell you more detail about that. But it extended on to the point that here they are in Columbia, South Carolina, helping us rebuild homes after the flood, which has become their national cause now. And I was so pleased to be able to, through some work we're doing with Rotary with flood victims, to find out about this organization and to be involved a little bit with them and learn about what they're doing around the country, and also particularly about what they're doing here. It's a very unique thing. It's some of the greatest charity work I've encountered, and it is something that we can be proud of in an association with Rotary. As many of you know, money came pouring into South Carolina from other Rotary clubs and from Rotary districts around the country. And in terms of money to help flood victims. And some of that money resides with our district, and we have decided to try to find a way to work with St. Bernard Project, kind of in a larger picture, and help them fund what they're doing in the Midlands to help our citizens with their flood recovery. So there is a combination of work that's being done, and I think Michaela just told me that there are 2 work days set up. One of our Rotary clubs in the district in the Midlands has set up a work day, and their members are going to be coming to a site and work with the St. Bernard Project to do work on a home that's been destroyed by the floods. So it is an opportunity for all of us. If anybody else has an interest in that, if you would let us know, you can let me know or others in the club on the board, and we'll try to direct you to how that might come about. But it is an opportunity for us to put our hands in this project and to help serve with the St. Bernard Project. I'm going to tell you real quickly, Michaela graduated in 2011 from the University of Florida with a degree in psychology and philosophy, and now she's a construction manager. I asked her how that happened. She said after graduation she spent 2 years in Cambodia with the Peace Corps, and she said that was a disastrous place, and she learned how to do disaster relief there and decided that when she came back to the United States that's what she wanted to do. And she's got her feet real wet, and I think she's having a great time and doing some great work. So please welcome Michaela.
I did go to the University of Florida. I'm sorry for my Gator love, but it's true. And I did also major in philosophy and psychology, and here I am. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what the St. Bernard Project is doing nationally and also in South Carolina. So I'm going to start nationally, and as John said, St. Bernard Project started in New Orleans in 2006 after Hurricane Katrina. It started with a lawyer and a teacher who came down. They were a couple at that time, and just thought they would help out, maybe rebuild for a week or 2. They still live there. They are the CEOs and the president of St. Bernard Project. They went there and realized...
Speak directly into that mic.
They're pulling
Is that better?
down just a little bit.
Okay. They realized when they went to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, about 6 months after going there, that nothing was getting done. There was a lot of money that was pulled into New Orleans, but nothing was being built. There were homeowners sitting on the side of the street looking at their houses that were completely destroyed. So Zach and Liz said, no more of this. So their model is that we want to effectively and predictably cause change and reconstruct homes after hurricanes or environmental disasters and do it quicker than anybody else, because right now it's not happening quickly. As you guys know, or I don't know if you do know, but things are not building right now. We're one of the only organizations in the Midlands, as well as across the states, that are rebuilding houses, and that's a problem. So after Hurricane Katrina, we went to New Orleans. About 3 years later, we were asked to go to Joplin, Missouri, to help with the street that was destroyed by a tornado. So we spent about 1.5 years there. We rebuilt 130 homes, and they said, all right, you guys are good, you guys can go. So we left Joplin. We were asked to go to New York and New Jersey after Hurricane Sandy. We're still there. About 7 months ago, we were asked to go to Texas to help the floods there. We're still there. I was deployed to South Carolina after the October flooding with a group of 4 other members, and here I am. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what we're doing here in this area. I'm going to give you guys kind of like a rundown of what we're doing, and then if there's any questions, please feel free to ask. So St. Bernard Project was asked to come here. We started setting up our operation about 3 weeks after the floods. Our organization rebuilds houses for homeowners who are low and moderate income, who cannot afford with their personal funds, with their FEMA or their flood insurance, to rebuild their houses by themselves. It is okay if they receive flood insurance, it's okay if they receive FEMA, but with that money they can't go out and use a market rate subcontractor to rebuild their home. So we got here, I would say within the first week, we probably had 25 applications. We now have 130. We get probably around 7 calls a day for homeowners in the area. In the Midlands specifically, are asking for our help, who are living with homes with mold on the ceiling, or they have their house that was gutted but was never rebuilt. Because of the now proximity of the storm to like within 4 months, and so now mold is really showing its face. So if there was an issue before, there's an issue now. And they either weren't able to apply for FEMA, or they applied to FEMA, they didn't get enough money. That's a huge problem that we're noticing. Homeowners are applying to have to rebuild their house, and they get $500 for a house that's going to cost them $35,000. And they're living off $1,000 a month. So they're in a really tough spot right now. Besides that, we've done 2 homes already. We've done 12 mold remediation and demolition, which is a little bit separate, but our 2 homes that are the owner-occupied rebuilds, which we like to call a traditional rebuild. We put the whole thing back together. 2 of those are finished. 3 more will be done by the end of this month, and then we're going to have 4 more starting up in the beginning of March. So we're really excited about that. We're also asking to get an AmeriCorps grant. AmeriCorps members are kind of like paid volunteers to the federal government. I'm not sure if you guys know about AmeriCorps, but they are partnered with St. Bernard Project, so depending on where our location is, we get around 5 to, well, in New Orleans we have 30, but we'll probably get around 5 to 10 here, which are going to help us start building things out quicker and faster. They're also going to help us start calling more clients and recruiting volunteers, so things can start moving quicker and quicker. Right now we're 7 of us, and we're chugging as fast as we can, but it's a lot. So that's what we're doing right now, and I can give you guys some of the qualifications about the homeowners. I know that's usually a topic that gets brought up. Homeowners that we work with have to have owned the home before the storm. They have to plan on living in the home after we rebuild it. Again, they can't use a market rate subcontractor, although that's okay if they have flood insurance or FEMA allotted. But just with that fund, they can't use a market rate subcontractor. They have to be the homeowner of the home, and their name has to be in the title or the deed. We do have, we say, a priority for choosing which homeowners we're going to start working on the first. Usually it's homeowners that have small children in the house or who are elderly. It also kind of depends on how severe the damage is, and that's kind of a gray area because we don't, what's a small spot of mold or a huge house of mold, it's kind of hard to say which one's black and white, but we really try to prioritize the one that's in the greatest health or safety risk. Again, we have 120 applications. We've seen probably 80 houses right now. We have 44 people on our waiting list. So we're seeing a lot. We're trying to get to them as fast as we can. We have some funding right now to do 10 houses by June. So the ones that I'm talking about, the 5 that will be done by the end of the month, and the 4 that start up next month will be in that funding. And then I think we're starting to try to get some more up. So once that's done in June, we can continue our work here. So any questions about the work that we're doing? Yes.
How do you fund it?
Say again?
How do you fund it? How do you raise the pay for that?
Yep, so when we first arrived here, we do have some corporate funders, which is UPS, Toyota, Zurich. They gave us kind of like a little pool to say, here, try to get going, get your operations up and going. Since then, United Way of Midlands and Mungo Homes have funded us for our first 10 houses. Yeah.
Do you have a team of subcontractors that are, because you mentioned market rate versus,
right?
So how does that work?
So that we sub out for our homes. So it's kind of an interesting model. So the St. Bernard Project uses volunteer labor, our AmeriCorps site supervisors, as well as some paid subcontractors. So we can do everything besides electric, HVAC, plumbing, roof, and foundation. So everything else, insulation, drywall, flooring, painting, installing cabinets, that we just learned last week, we do that ourselves, with ourselves, our AmeriCorps members, as well as volunteers when we have them. Volunteers are crucial for this operation. The more volunteers we have, the faster it's going to go. Right now, it's a little. When we first got here, there was a lot of volunteers. It's down. It's definitely dropped significantly. It's about to go back up this spring break, but I think it's going to drop again. So again, part of my job is to find out how we're going to keep these volunteers consistently throughout the years. This is not going to be a one-year operation. I believe it's going to be a lot longer than that. So the thing that we don't do, we are actively searching in the community to find subcontractors. We have a couple that we like. We're always looking for more, and that's kind of been word of mouth. Angie's List, the BIA is also helpful with helping us find subcontractors.
Michaela,
Yeah.
how many homes you've rebuilt in New Orleans, and if you are still going?
Yeah, in New Orleans, I think we're at 620. So Texas is at 7. Joplin was 130. New Jersey and New York, I believe, are at 110. And again, we're still going. So in New Orleans, we get about $800,000 a year from grants to help us rebuild. But I was working in New Orleans before this, and we get, I think it's maybe 3 or 4 phone calls a day from people who are still seeking help. And this is 10 years after the storm.
Michaela, I know that some other Rotary clubs are providing volunteers, and I think Ione Cockrell's here, and she's our assistant governor for our district. But I think one of the things we're thinking is there are a lot of folks within the Rotary district, both the eastern side of South Carolina and the north side. Could you describe where you are and,
Yeah.
and helping to bring all that together?
Right, so you're talking about like across the state and what we're doing there.
Right.
So that's a great question. We are currently only working in Lexington and Richland County. I've been to many SC VOAD, I've been to many rebuilding, long-term rebuilding organization groups since being here across South Carolina. The work across the state is minimal. It's great here. I mean, I say great, we're still one of the only people who are here, but it's going at least. We are wanting to expand. I do not have the capacity to do that yet. And so part of that's going to come with when we get our AmeriCorps members or when we get more funding from different areas. We're also going to do mold remediation trainings across the state. So one of my site supervisors or a staff, I'm not sure which one yet, is going to go across the state and travel and meet other organizations and teach them to do some of the things that we do so they can do it for other homeowners across the state. It is absolutely necessary in the near future for more organizations to start popping up in places like Sumter, Somerton, Georgetown. It's a huge problem. I was in Sumter about 2 months ago and realized that it's a problem. So, sorry, we're not working there. There are some people who are. We are trying to expand our services and stretch them as far as they can go right now, just in trainings and teaching. But right now, we're only actually rebuilding in Lexington and Richland County.
Michaela, tell us about the financial impact of money. And how much money does it cost to build a house?
That's a great question. So right now our funding is about $20,000 a house. I would say the houses that we're asking on average is going to cost us about $30,000 to $35,000 a house. So for a $20,000 house, usually it's minimal mold damage or a roof that was not good before the storm but really got some beating during the storm and now needs to be fixed up because there's active leaking and active mold because of that. But again, so usually $20,000 with our funding, but it's going to need to get bumped up quickly. We can't reach a lot of homes right now because it's so expensive to rebuild. And again, as the mold gets worse, it's only getting more and more costly. So, I mean, a house in New Orleans costs about $100,000, so me to say $30,000 right now is low. When I send these estimates to New Orleans, it's like, wow, that's great. But it's only because it's been so near to the storm that damage hasn't really sunk in yet, but it will soon. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Is there any push or facilitation by your group of raising the elevation of floors so that the flooding doesn't recur?
Yeah, that's also a good question. So the state has mandated that some homes, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with damage assessments, but if a home had more than a certain amount of damage, they are requiring that house becomes elevated. So the state is kind of mandating that for us. There has been a couple of homes that wasn't required by the state, but we decided we can't work on this house until it's elevated because it has flooded multiple times since the storm, or it has a history of flooding that they just dealt with, but now it's been much worse. That's a hard call to make though, because when you say I can't work on this house before it's elevated, then you have to find money for elevation, and elevation is about $30,000. So I just turned a $30,000 job into a $60,000 job. It's a tough call, but I think we're worried, and this happened in other areas. It's happened in Texas. If you rebuild a house when it's not supposed to be rebuilt in that level, it floods. So I think we built like 7 houses in Texas and they all flooded a month later. So we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen here. So far it hasn't, but yeah.
Do you solicit, I know I'm on the charitable foundation of the BIA,
Yeah.
but also I know the State Realtors Association had a lot of money come in from across the country and they have not spent it.
Well,
You better talk to him.
right. Well, that's after the meeting.
So, I mean, there's money that was raised and it's just, I don't know where it's going.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the same thing happened with other organizations also. Do you go out and solicit or make presentations? I know you have at the BIA, I guess, but.
I do a lot of these. So I'm the South Carolina operations manager. Our national director is here about once every 2 weeks doing these kinds of meetings. Any tips or help you guys can push to us or even other organizations, I'm not just going to recruit for St. Bernard Project, but anybody who's rebuilding, those types of meetings would be helpful for sure. Also coming to our SC VOAD meetings. SC VOAD is like a group of voluntary organizations who are active in disasters. So it's people like Red Cross, Salvation Army, myself. see Roger there a lot. But, so any of those connections would be helpful. I'm not actively soliciting rather than me, so this is like my farthest, but our national director is to some degree. But again, any help would be appreciated. Does that answer?
Yeah, I mean, I know the Red Cross had a lot of money coming here too,
Yeah.
and if we don't spend it, it's gonna go somewhere else, like to New Jersey, for
Yeah.
God's sakes.
Right. Yeah. I think that not many people know what we're doing. I think that it's been, to some degree, pushed like out of the sight, out of sight, out of mind. And so people aren't realizing that there are still hundreds of thousands of homeowners out there who don't have help. They also don't know that people like us are doing work. So if there's any way to help us do the work or help other organizations do the work, we need these kind of partnerships. So I heard a statistic from, I'm not going over time, but I heard a statistic recently from United Way. The statistic was FEMA gave them data points every month, and the data point was that of all of the applications that were submitted to FEMA across the United States, more than half of them came from South Carolina. This is a huge disaster. It's huge, and no one really knows that it's going on. So the more that you guys can help us, or we can help you, make this a spotlight across South Carolina and across the nation, it's going to be beneficial for this community in the long run.
Can I ask for a clarification? I want to make sure I understood.
Yeah.
You said there are hundreds of
Well-
thousands of people in this area whose homes were flooded?
So I'm going to use, it's hard to get data points because not everyone, they use the FEMA, who has registered with FEMA are considered those points. So they don't know anybody besides that. In Richland County alone, I believe it's 20,000. I believe in Lexington it's about, might be 10. So I believe there's over 100,000 or close to 100,000 across the state that have just registered with FEMA. That's not including people who haven't registered with FEMA or people who are just now noticing, oh no, I do have damage to my home, but are too late because the window has closed with FEMA. So it's over 100,000, and I'm not sure what it could be 200,000, but the point that FEMA has given us is 100,000 roughly around the state.
Okay.
Yes.
How about one SC? Are you working closely with them?
Yep, they're also assisting us. So they're actually going to sponsor our mold trainings across the state. They're kind of our funding source for that. They're trying to help out as much as they can. Right now, what they can do with us is help us sponsor us to go to city and talk to organizations to get this going. But I know they've helped others across as well. They just did a news story recently that I think it's like $400,000 was given out to different organizations across the state. Yeah. Yes.
I know of so many people still waiting for permits
Yeah.
since October 4th. Can you explain a little bit about that line where if FEMA decides you're under 50%, then you can go one route, but if you're over 50%, it's totally different?
Yeah, so I think you're talking about the damage assessment with the elevation, right? So to explain damage assessment, so say a house was, before the storm, pre-valued at $100,000. After the storm, the amount of money it's going to cost to fix that home is $60,000. That means its damage assessment is 60%. So it's the percent of money it would cost in relative to its pre-storm assessment. If it's over 50%, then you have to elevate your home before you can move into the house. So that's a whole, that's a whole different route. And honestly, when people are told they have to elevate, from what I've seen, low to moderate income families are just going to get rid of their house because it's too much money.
And I was going to say, I also know some have had to hire consultants and hire architects, because if they couldn't elevate, there were walls, like in a lot of the floodplains that they've been asked to do.
Yeah.
Which right off the bat was an additional 20.
Right.
Right off the bat.
Yeah.
And so, thank you. It's still so relevant to so many.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And people who are waiting for these, so they have to be elevated, they have to be told to what degree or what height it has to be elevated. They're still waiting on that number, so even if they have the funds, the number isn't always coming through. It's like, once you say it has to be elevated, it becomes a huge circle that goes to City Hall and the state and architects and money, which is the hugest portion of it all. So the elevation, if you're over 50%, it's a rough spot, for sure. Yeah, yes.
Since you have become a construction expert.
Yes.
I know a lot of the homes in Pine Glen, for example,
Right.
in Lexington County were built on slabs.
Yes.
It's very difficult to raise a slab, is that correct?
This is correct. Yes, so the houses that have to be elevated in Pine Glen, I believe there's 4 of them. None of them have been elevated, and I don't know if any of them will be. Our first house that's finishing on Wednesday, or our first big house, is in Pine Glen. It's also on a slab, but it's not going to need to be elevated. It has not flooded since, and I hope that it will not flood post. But yeah, so when we first got to Pine Glen, that was the community that we were really shown and said, this needs your help, this needs your attention. And I remember seeing like the big orange X's on the house, and that's still there. It hasn't even been gutted out. So I believe, and I don't want to speak for the homeowner, that they're planning on demoing those houses and just using it for, I don't know, park or whatever, getting a buyout for it. But they're not, I've not seen elevation since.
But when I got into real estate business in 1972, and I had open house at Pine Glen, it was wet then.
Yeah. It's a
It's gonna stay
conversation.
wet.
Yeah, Pine Glen is I went to a meeting recently for Pine Glen, and they are in a tough spot. Yeah, so, well, and I can do another presentation on that, yeah.
Are you only residential, or is there anything for commercial and small businesses that, any kind of, help or
Yeah,
anything for them?
we're only residential. We've had small business ask us for help. At this moment, we can't. I don't know if we, and I can't speak across the other affiliates across the nation if we've done a small business before, but we are not in the position right now to just help small businesses. We just don't have the capacity. We don't even have the capacity to do the residential houses that we have right now. So I think it just would spread us too thin.
Steve, one more over here.
Okay, yeah.
The fact is that very few, if any, of the dams that broke have been repaired. Do you take that into account when you decide which homes to rebuild?
Mm-hmm.
Those that could be hurt again?
Right. So we would take into account, so I guess theoretically, if a dam hasn't been rebuilt and there is still very saturated soil, so the soil has not had time to dry out, correct? So if the dam hasn't been rebuilt and they're still surrounded by saturated soil, then with this amount of rain, it would have reflooded again, or it would have gotten very close, and we've seen this happen in other areas. So houses that have reflooded since the storm, that have houses that have reflooded up to 6 times since the storm. But if it's flooded at least 1 time since the storm, we have to figure out another solution. I would say I've seen about maybe 5 houses of my 100 that have done that. So it's not very common, but it is taken into consideration. And I don't think we are necessarily taking into account the dam, although we could, but it's more of just the occurrences of flooding since the original flooding. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a tremendous amount of work that's going to have to be done, and we appreciate St. Bernard Project coming to Columbia and beginning to do that work. Sounds like you're going to be here a while, and Rotary is an organization that wants to cooperate and to help wherever we can. And to talk more about specifically how Columbia Rotary wants to help, John Bakis has a couple of closing remarks.
Thank you. The really interesting thing about this organization that I have learned in a number of meetings I've had with them is they really know what they're doing. They really know what they're doing. And one of the most exceptional organizations I've been around in terms of they jump right in, they know exactly where to go to find the problems and how to solve the problems, and they move very, very quickly. And that's why they're in demand in other places where disasters have occurred. We can help in any number of ways. We can help if you know how to paint with a paintbrush or hit a nail with a hammer, you can help. And there are going to be plenty of opportunities for work days. They're just now starting to set those up with other Rotary clubs. We've got a lot of resources in this club, people who have skills, whether it be architecture or heating and cooling or whatever those skills and resources are. Those kinds of things can be very helpful to what these people are doing. So think about how you might assist. It is a huge project. They're going to be here for years. It's not they're going to come and work for 6 months and leave. They're going to be here for many years. And when you consider what they've done in New Orleans, they've rebuilt over 600 homes, about 640 or 50 homes, and they still have need in New Orleans after all these years, after 10 years. They're still rebuilding homes there. I don't know what New Orleans would have done without the community service that's happened there. Probably a vast majority of what's been rebuilt has been rebuilt by community service organizations. So they're going to be a huge asset to our community, and let's find a way to help them. I think there are lots of ways we can serve, yeah.
I've talked with Ione some about this. My current role, once you're the president of the Columbia Rotary Club, somebody grabs you at the district and pulls you in. So we are looking for projects for Rotary clubs to do together in a way in which, you know, we have a headline. I am the public image chair for the district 7770. And we're looking for projects that we can do and highlight what the Rotary clubs are doing. So we're wanting the whole district, including our club and other clubs around the district, whether they are in the area that you guys are working or whether they might send some money from those other places in here. So, you know, we got this district conference coming up in March. What's the date on that, Ione?
18th and 19th.
18th and 19th. So the district conference is in Columbia at the Convention Center, I'm pretty sure. So we're going to try to build up a little momentum. So if you've got friends that are other Rotarians in other clubs, we really wanted to focus on an organization that practices excellence. So we want some manpower and women power, but also some cash power. And we feel like if we focus our efforts in on that and we publicize that, so any of you media folks, you know, call me or get inside, send me an email and tell me you want to help. Because we want to associate the brand of Rotary with just this kind of thing, with, of course, our club being the leading club in the district, taking a lead role in that.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot to mention money. That's one resource we all have a little bit of. And thank you for mentioning the Realtors Fund potentially. But those kinds of things, if you know where there's some money that's come to Columbia and it's sitting somewhere, this is a great organization to help with it. Thank you.
Many of you are looking for badges, and we've hopefully gotten caught up on badges. If you still need help with your badge, there's something wrong with it, or you need a new badge, all the new badges that have been done are out here on the table with the listing of the numbers, so you'll know where to put it in the storage container. So see me if you have issues with your badge.
Great, Elliot, thank you. I just, as we close, I see Lieutenant Governor McMaster sitting right here. He had a unique experience over the weekend with the South Carolina Republican primary. Would you care to share a couple of minutes on how Saturday went?
Well, as y'all probably noticed, there's a lot of fun. I think the turnout was, let's see, last year was about 600, last time 603,000, this time was 725,000. So that's, I mean, it's just off the scale. Back when I was party chairman in 2000, we had 275,000 people turn out, and that was just, that was off the scale then. So we really are growing. I don't know how the Democrats could do this Saturday, but I expect it's going to be a record as well. So, and I will, of course, I was for Mr. Trump, and it's kind of funny, all the press was asking about different people going this way or that way. Among our senators and congressmen, elected people, we had, just like a covey of quail, somebody went everywhere. And it's just, speaking for the Republican side, I think it's the same for the Democratic side, this kind of competition really makes it a stronger place to be. And because you learn more and more about what the different parties stand for, and you learn a little bit about philosophy and about political policy and government and all that sort of stuff. So it's a very healthy exercise, and if you didn't get involved last Saturday, get involved this Saturday and go out and do something, because this thing puts us on the map. We had to fight over the years to see that South Carolina retained its early position in the Republican Party. And it was a real fight. In fact, when I was chairman, we went up there, that's when a lot of the fighting was going on, and other states were trying to jump ahead of us. And in South Carolina, you don't have to have a state law to set the date. The executive committee of the party does it. So what the executive committee did on that year, when we went up, when it was all in turmoil, was they sent me up there with 4 forms filled out. with a different date for each one and one in a blank. So when the other folks figured out that we would be able to get ahead of them no matter what they did, that's when it settled down. And since then, this state, where we're in the top 4, it's a great thing for the state, brings money in. That's the story.
Thank you for sharing on the spot. I appreciate that. It was certainly an exciting weekend in South Carolina. We will close the meeting today by singing, so please stand.